You're not seriously thinking of doing this without me, are you? Ellis's voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calculated tone that always came right before he went in for the kill. He stood in the doorway of my office, arms crossed over his chest, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth like he already knew the answer. I didn't look up right away. My hands were clenched on the edge of the walnut desk we'd picked out together 2 years ago from an estate sale in Haley. Funny how the desk now felt like the only solid thing left. I'm not thinking about it, I said slowly. I've already done it. That smile of his faltered just for a second. You bought me out? The disbelief in his voice was almost laughable, like he couldn't even fathom that I'd make a move without his say-so. I leaned back in my chair and met his gaze. The papers were signed this morning. The lawyer filed them already. For the first time in a long time, Ellis didn't have anything smug to say. He just stood there, silent, watching me, measuring. I used to hate that look. Used to fear it, 'cause it always came with consequences. But not anymore. Not this time. My name is Calla Winslow. I'm 44 years old. I live in Boise, Idaho, and I design custom furniture from reclaimed wood. Nothing flashy, just honest, well-crafted work. That's what I've always loved about it. For the last 5 years, I co-owned a workshop and showroom called Winslow & Hart. And for those same 5 years, I lived under the illusion that Ellis Hart was my partner, in business, in life, in everything. But illusions don't last forever. Especially not when the man you trusted starts siphoning money behind your back. I wasn't always this composed. Believe me. 3 years ago, if Ellis had raised his voice or rolled his eyes the way he used to when I got too emotional, I would have backed off immediately. I would have apologized for questioning him, for creating tension, for not appreciating all the things he supposedly did behind the scenes. He was the one who understood branding. He was the one who talked the talk with clients, vendors, and city permits. He had the charisma, the charm, the spreadsheets. And I had sawdust in my hair and dirt under my fingernails. I designed, built, sanded, stained. I was the heart of the workshop. But Ellis was the voice, the face, the handshake. At least that's what he made sure I believed. And for a long time I did. We met at the Boise Art in the Park Festival. I had a little table with some hand-carved stools and shelves. He walked by, stopped, and complimented the grain pattern in my red oak bench like he knew what he was talking about. He didn't. But he looked like he did. That was his superpower. He had this easy swagger, salt and pepper hair that made him look distinguished, and a confidence that could sell snow to a blizzard. Ever think of scaling this? He asked that day. Scaling what? I blinked. Your work? Your brand. There's a market for this, you know. Rustic chic, local sourcing. It's huge in Denver right now. You've got something here. You just need polish. I should have seen the red flags right there in that sentence. You just need polish. Translation: you're not enough on your own. But I wasn't listening for danger. I was listening for opportunity. I'd been running the business out of my garage for 3 years by then. Living on commissioned work, scraping by and hoping, praying that someone would finally notice what I could do. And here was this man, Ellis Hart, who seemed to believe in me. He called me brilliant, said I had raw talent, bought me coffee the next week and brought a leather-bound notebook filled with ideas for branding, online outreach, and expansion. I was swept up in it. In him. 6 months later, we were sharing tools, a business license, and a bed. First year felt like magic. We found a beat-up warehouse in Garden City and turned it into our studio. Ellis handled the city permits, negotiated the lease, even secured a small business loan. I was impressed, grateful, and honestly, relieved. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. We painted the walls ourselves, strung up Edison bulbs, and salvaged a sign from an old lumber mill that we repainted to say Winslow & Hart Custom Furnishings. He wanted his name second, he said, because the artistry's all you. And I believed that too. But then things started shifting. Slowly, so subtly I didn't even register it at first. The client meetings that I used to sit in on? He started taking those solo. You don't need to waste your time on small talk, babe. I got this. Invoices? He handled them. Said he was better with numbers. Social media, emails, vendor accounts, little by little I had less and less visibility into what was going on outside the workshop. But inside the workshop, I was breaking my back. 12-hour days, bruises on my thighs from hauling live-edge slabs across the floor. I'd skip meals just to hit deadlines. And whenever I'd ask why our profit margin wasn't better, why we weren't seeing the returns we'd projected, he'd say things like, "Do you want to deal with QuickBooks, Kala? No? Then let me handle it." Or worse, "You're the artist. I'm the business guy. Stay in your lane." Sounds ridiculous now. Like I was some naive fool. But when you're in it, when someone you love gaslights you so gently, so convincingly, you stop trusting your instincts. You start believing that your lack of knowledge is a flaw. That deferring to him is keeping the peace. That you are the reason things are hard. But the truth was simpler. Ellis was carving out control. One polished little piece at a time. And the day I found out just how far he'd gone, that was the day everything changed. It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to answer. Ellis had left his phone on the kitchen counter, face down. He was in the shower, humming some old blues song like he didn't have a care in the world. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. But when his phone lit up with a notification that said, "Statement from First Ridge Business Bank, joint account," something inside me just clicked. We didn't have a business account at First Ridge. Our accounts were with a local credit union downtown. At least mine were. Call went to voicemail. I stared at the screen, heartbeat in my ears. My mouth had gone dry. When Ellis came out of the bathroom, towel slung low on his hips, he grinned like nothing in the world was off. "Hey, you make coffee?" he asked, rubbing a hand through his wet hair. I smiled. Small. Tight. "Yeah, pot's fresh." That's the thing about people like Ellis. They're so confident in their own schemes, so convinced of their invincibility, that they don't even realize when the wind starts to shift. He had no idea that while he poured his coffee and kissed me on the cheek, I was already planning how I was going to find out what he was hiding. That night, after he fell asleep, dead to the world like always, I slipped his phone out from under the pillow. I knew the passcode. Of course I did. We didn't have secrets. Well, at least I didn't. It didn't take long. Emails. Statements. Documents. There was another LLC registered 6 months ago under the name Heart Ridge Concepts LLC. Same workshop address. Same client names. Except I wasn't listed anywhere. It was just Ellis. Sole owner. Sole beneficiary. And then I found it, an email to a real estate agent in Ketchum, talking about expanding the business, scaling production, and possibly relocating to a larger studio once my current contract dissolves. My current contract. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just preparing to leave. He was preparing to take everything. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, knees pulled to my chest, going over every conversation we'd had for the past year. All the moments I doubted myself. All the times he'd brushed off my questions. The confidential client he'd flown to meet in Denver. The loan application I'd never signed but saw reflected in the books. He'd been bleeding our joint account for months, quietly moving money out of our business and into his private one, setting up for the next chapter of his life, a chapter one wasn't even in. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was furious. The next morning, I didn't say a word. Just got dressed like normal and went into the workshop early. I stood in the middle of the floor, staring at the workbench where we'd built our first table together. That stupid herringbone top I'd sanded for hours, right there under the skylight. And I realized he never cared about the craft. It had always been about the perception. The brand. Control. That's when I made the call. Hi, my name is Calla Winslow. I'm the co-owner of Winslow & Hart, and I'd like to schedule a consultation about dissolving a business partnership and protecting my IP. The woman on the other end of the line, a paralegal named Raina Montrose, didn't flinch. Her voice was calm, precise. We can get you in this afternoon. I met Raina at a law office on the second floor of a nondescript brick building near the courthouse. She wore no-nonsense heels and had the kind of piercing gaze that could slice through paperwork and people. As soon as I sat down, I spilled everything. The joint account. The secret LLC. The emails. Conversations I remembered in hindsight with new, horrifying clarity. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose and said, "He's not just siphoning funds. He's staging a hostile takeover." I blinked. "But we're not even married." "You don't have to be," she said. "If you co-founded the company and he's using your labor and name to secure future ventures without your consent, that's misappropriation and potentially fraud depending on how deep it goes." That word, fraud, felt like a hot knife in my stomach. I thought I'd feel vindicated. I didn't. I felt sick. How do I stop him? Raina leaned forward. First, we protect what's yours. Your designs. Your name. Your portion of the company. Second, we lock down access. Change passwords. Freeze accounts. Third, we move fast. That afternoon, I drove back to the workshop, hands trembling on the steering wheel. I felt like I was walking into enemy territory. Except the enemy was the man I'd once thought I might marry. Ellis was in the back, talking on speakerphone, probably to one of his clients. "You'll get the quote today. And yes, I'll personally supervise the install. That's the benefit of going through Hartridge directly. Cleaner process, faster turnaround." Hartridge. No Winslow. Not anymore. When he saw me, he gave me that same easy smile. "Hey, babe. You left early. Everything okay?" I smiled back. Flat. "Cool. Yeah. Just had a few things to take care of." He nodded like it was nothing. Like he wasn't burning the house down behind my back. But I was done pretending. Done being the woman who built everything while he handed out the credit. Because now, I was building something else. And this time, he wouldn't be part of it. I spent the next 48 hours in a kind of trance. Half of me was on autopilot, checking orders, smoothing over deadlines, sending polite but vague responses to clients Ellis had previously managed. The other half was in full-on survival mode, scanning every shared file, every invoice, every scrap of communication for signs of where else he might have buried things. I wasn't sleeping much. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my brain cataloging passwords, legal clauses, client names, wondering which one still saw me as a partner, and which had already jumped ship to his shiny new solo firm. What haunted me most was how easy it had been for him. Not just to reroute our accounts or rebrand our image, but to slowly erase me from the picture, piece by piece, until I was just the woman in the background with sawdust on her jeans and calluses on her hands. The labor. The talent. The body. But not the name. Not the power. On Thursday morning, Raina called. "I just got off the phone with the state registrar," she said. "We've expedited the filing to restructure your company under a new entity, Winslow Custom Works, LLC. You'll be listed as the sole managing member. We've locked the design IP to your name and flagged the original co-ownership as contested." I stood in the middle of the lumber aisle at a supplier in Meridian, trying not to cry in public. "So it's real," I whispered. "He can't touch it anymore?" "If he tries," Raina said, her tone firm, "he'll have to go through you." That afternoon, I pulled into the workshop just as Ellis was coming out the front door. He was on his phone again, sunglasses on, clipboard under his arm, like a man with $1 million portfolio and not a single care in the world. "Hey," he said casually, as if nothing had happened. "I've got a walkthrough with the Cortland project. Can you get the maple top started this afternoon?" Cortland project. That was my client. A couple who'd walked into the showroom 2 months ago after seeing one of my live-edge consoles at the Boise Art Museum. I'd drawn up the design myself. I nodded slowly. Sure. Just curious though, did they agree to sign with Hart Ridge Concepts or was it still under Winslow and Hart? Ellis paused just for a second. But I saw it, the flicker of guilt. "They don't really care about the name," he said with a shrug. "As long as the product's good. You know how it is." No, I didn't know how it was. 'Cause I cared about the name. I'd bled for the name. But I didn't respond. I just smiled and walked past him. 'Cause his time was almost up. That evening, while he was still out glad-handing clients that I'd brought into the business, I went to the studio's back office and started cleaning house. Literally and figuratively. I removed my name from any documents that still bore his by association. Unlinked our Google Drive. Created a new company bank account with my EIN. Changed every password, website, email, payment processor. I called a friend from college, Dana, now a graphic designer in Portland, and asked if she could help me build a new logo. Something that felt mine. She sent me 3 concepts by midnight. I stared at them for a long time. All of them had the same thing in common, the name Winslow, bold and centered. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. Deeply. The next morning, Ellis showed up late. That alone wasn't unusual. He often worked from home, which I later realized meant charming new investors behind my back. But this time he seemed thrown. "I can't log into the Shopify backend," he said, holding up his phone. Did something glitch? I didn't even look up from my workbench. Nope. I just removed your admin access. There was a beat of stunned silence. "You what?" "I've restructured," I said calmly, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table toward him. "Effective immediately, Winslow and Hart is dissolved. You'll find the legal documents inside. Raina's signature is on the last page." He stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. "You're joking." "Nope. You can't," his voice pitched. "You can't just cut me out like this, Calla. This is my business too." "No," I said, standing. "It never was. You never built anything here. You rode my back while setting up your own exit plan behind mine. You just didn't count on me catching up before you could finish the job." His face went white, then red. "You're gonna regret this," he said. "You think you can handle everything on your own?" "I know I can," I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it. But the part of me that had survived Ellis's constant undermining, the part that had internalized all the subtle digs and dismissals, still flinched a little when he left, slamming the door so hard one of the hanging pendant lights shook. What if he was right? What if I couldn't do it alone? That night, I called Dana again. "Hey," I said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Shoot." "Do you ever just feel like you're faking it? Like no matter how hard you work, someone's going to find out you don't know what you're doing?" She didn't even hesitate. "Every day," she said. "But you know what? It's usually the people who aren't faking it who feel that way. You're not faking, Calla. You're finally free." Her words hit me like a jolt to the spine. 'Cause deep down I knew she was right. Ellis had built a cage made of compliments and contracts and charm. And I had lived in it for 5 long years, mistaking gilded bars for support. But now, I was standing outside of it. And I wasn't going back in. By Monday morning, I'd done something I hadn't done in years. I took the day off. Not because I was sick, not because the lumber shipment was delayed, And not because Ellis asked me to be flexible so he could meet with a VIP client. I took it off because I finally understood that I didn't need to prove I was worth a break. I packed a thermos of coffee, grabbed my notebook, and drove up into the hills outside of Boise. There's a little overlook on Table Rock I used to hike to before everything got so crowded in my head. I sat there for hours, just thinking, listening to wind cut through the brush, watching hawks ride the thermals. For the first time in what felt like forever, there were no buzzing emails, no spreadsheets to review, no man beside me second-guessing every word I said. Just space. And me in it. Later that afternoon, I met Raina at her office. She was reviewing a packet of documents, flipping through them with the efficiency of someone who'd seen it all before. "I did some more digging," she said without looking up. "Ellis's new LLC isn't just trying to duplicate your client base. He's also reached out to 3 suppliers claiming he owns exclusive purchasing rights for the studio." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. That's not even remotely true. I know. Which is why I've already drafted a cease and desist. She slid a letter across the desk to me. Her name, her firm, the official stamp of legal weight. It was short and sharp, the kind of thing that would send a clear message. "You're done here." "He's going to push back," I said quietly. "That's what he does. He turns it around. Makes me feel like I'm overreacting. Like I'm ruining everything because I can't handle the pressure." Raina finally looked up. Her expression softened just a little. "Kala, you're not ruining anything. You're repairing damage. That's not the same thing." That night, I started setting up something new, something Ellis would never be part of. Client newsletter. A portfolio site under the new name. A project calendar that wasn't filtered through his approval. And a launch event, intimate, quiet, honest, where I could reintroduce myself and my work to the world without the Ellis Hart Show running the spotlight. I even created a new Instagram account at Winslow Custom Works. The first post was a close-up of a black walnut cabinet I'd finished that morning, captioned simply, "Handmade with intention. Built without compromise. A new chapter begins." I stared at the screen for a long time before hitting post. And then something strange happened. The likes started trickling in. Then comments. Then shares. Not viral. Not overnight fame. But real people, former clients, local designers, old friends from art school, leaving messages like, "So glad to see you on your own. I always wondered why he was the one answering your emails. Can't wait to see what you do next." And just like that, the doubt that had settled in my chest like wet concrete began to crack. A few days later, I got a call from Karen Finch, one of our most loyal clients from the past year. She ran a boutique hospitality firm and had hired Winslow and Hart to outfit 2 of her properties. "Hey Kala," she said warmly. "I saw your post. Is it true you're branching out on your own?" I hesitated. "I am. I've restructured everything under a new company. It's just me now." There was a pause. Then, thank God. I blinked. "Sorry. I never liked Ellis," she said, chuckling. "Too slick. Always felt like he was selling something instead of listening. But you, your work, your presence, that's what made me come back. So, how soon can we book for that Aspen Ridge project?" I stared at the calendar on my desk. I was booked solid for 2 months. But I smiled. I'll find a way to fit it in. That night, I made dinner for myself. Real dinner, not peanut butter toast over the sink. I opened a bottle of Malbec I'd been saving for someday, lit the candle on the windowsill, and actually sat down at the table. As I ate, I thought about Ellis's voice, how he used to say things like, "You're not a real businesswoman until you stop being sentimental about clients." Or, "Do you know what our brand looks like without polish? Amateur hour." And of course, "Kala, I'm just trying to help. Don't be so sensitive." But now, with my name on the paperwork, with a new client waiting and my inbox full of messages addressed to me, I didn't feel sensitive. I felt clear. focused, ready. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about reclaiming everything I'd let him convince me I wasn't worthy of. My voice, my space, my future. Didn't take Ellis long to retaliate. He always did prefer confrontation over subtlety, especially when he wasn't in control. He showed up at the workshop one Thursday afternoon, unannounced, just as I was loading a finished set of reclaimed ash dining chairs into the back of a delivery van. He stepped out of his SUV like nothing had happened, sunglasses still on, crisp blazer flung casually over one shoulder. "Calla," he said like he was greeting an old friend. "You've been hard to reach." I didn't answer right away. Just secured the last strap on the stack of chairs and turned slowly. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. "Mind if we talk?" I didn't invite him inside. I didn't offer him coffee or pretend to play nice. "You've got 2 minutes," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. He laughed, but it was thin. Forced. "Still dramatic, I see. And still manipulative," I shot back. "Get to the point." His jaw tensed. He wasn't used to the new version of me, the one who didn't flinch when he raised his voice or cocked his eyebrow like a threat. "I saw the filing," he said finally. "You're trying to cut me out of our business completely." "I'm not trying," I said calmly. "I did. You should be thanking me, honestly. I didn't pursue criminal charges." His face darkened. "What you're doing is reckless. You don't understand the financial implications of walking away from our structure." "From my structure?" "No," I said. "I understand them perfectly. What I don't understand is why you think you can steal from me and still lecture me like I owe you anything." He took a step forward. "I built that brand with you. You built your ego with it," I said. "You leveraged my work, my name, my vision. And when you were done with me, you tried to take the whole thing and repackage it under Hartridge like it was yours alone." "You don't have the experience to run this alone," he snapped. "You're great with wood and a sander, but that's not enough. You don't know the first thing about scaling, about—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." He stepped back, eyes narrowing. "You've changed," he said. "You used to be so easy to control." He looked away. I was going to say collaborative. That word, collaborative, felt like a joke coming from him. As if we'd ever been equals. As if his partnership hadn't been just a long con to ride the success of someone else's labor. "Look," he said, adjusting his tone, softening. "I still believe in what we built. And I believe we could rebuild it better. Smarter. Together. I'm not here to fight." But I could see it in his body language, the small twitches of frustration, the fake calm layered over simmering entitlement. He wasn't here to reconcile. He was here to regain control. "You can leave now," I said. "Or you can stay and I'll have Raina file a harassment claim in the morning. Either way, this conversation is over." His mask slipped for just a second. And I saw the real Ellis underneath, the one who never thought I'd stand up to him. The one who never imagined that I might become stronger after he left, not weaker. "You're going to regret this," he said flatly. "When the novelty of going it alone wears off and you're drowning in paperwork and logistics and you realize no one wants to work with a bitter woodworker who can't see the big picture." I smiled. "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what I used to believe. 'Cause you said it to me so many times I started to hear it in my sleep. But not anymore." I took a step toward him now, just enough to reclaim the space between us. "You underestimated me, Ellis. You always did. And now you're just angry that I finally stopped doing the same." He didn't respond. Just turned, yanked open the door of his SUV, and drove off without another word. When the taillights disappeared down the street, I went back inside the workshop. The smell of tung oil and pine shavings greeted me like a friend. I placed both hands on the bench, exhaled, and let the adrenaline drain from my limbs. I wasn't shaking. Not like I used to. Not anymore. 'Cause this time I hadn't backed down. I hadn't folded. I hadn't cried behind the tool cabinet or waited for him to cool off. I'd stood my ground. And I was still standing. That evening I told Raina everything. She listened, took notes, and confirmed what I already suspected. "We'll file a written warning first," she said. "Document the visit. I doubt he'll escalate now that he sees he's lost leverage, but I want a paper trail just in case." "Thank you," I said. "For all of it." She smiled. "You did the hard part, Calla. You took your name back." 2 months later, I walked into the new showroom on a crisp October morning, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was stepping into someone else's dream. It was small, sure, only 900 square feet, with floor-to-ceiling windows and an old brick wall that still smelled faintly of the bakery that used to rent the space. But it was mine. Polished floors. The walnut reception counter I'd built by hand. The display wall featuring pieces I'd designed without second-guessing every creative choice. The brass plaque by the front door said simply, "Winslow Custom Works. Handmade. Honest. Independent. No ampersands. No other names. Just mine." The launch event had gone better than I expected. Not flashy. Not packed with influencers or paid PR. Just real clients. Real friends. People who came up to me with wide smiles and said, "We've been waiting for you to step out on your own." Dana flew in from Portland. Raina came too, in heels sharp enough to split a board. Even Karen Finch showed up with a design board under her arm and said she wanted to book a new project, a boutique hotel just north of Sun Valley. The same weekend, I signed the largest contract of my career. Not Ellis. Not Winslow and Hart. Me. As for Ellis, word travels fast in a city like Boise, especially when you burn the wrong bridges. Clients started talking. Vendors shared stories. One particularly bold supplier posted publicly that Hart Ridge Concepts had misrepresented ownership history during a transaction. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Within weeks, Ellis's presence in the local design scene all but vanished. Last I heard, he was trying to rebrand yet again, this time out of Spokane. The LinkedIn update came quietly. No fanfare. No mention of the company we built together. Because now I think even he knew he hadn't built anything. He had just tried to steal it. One quiet Sunday morning, I was cleaning up the workshop, rearranging some leftover materials, when I found it, an old sketch pad buried under a pile of scrap lumber. It was mine. From 3 years ago. Inside were doodles and notes, design concepts and measurements, and a page I didn't even remember writing. The top, in my messy, rushed handwriting, it said, "What if I just tried? What if I stopped waiting for someone else to believe in me?" I stared at that line for a long time. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because that woman, the one who wrote those words late at night, probably exhausted and afraid, had no idea what was coming. She didn't know she'd one day face down the man who tried to rewrite her story. She didn't know she'd launch a business under her own name, with clients who trusted her vision. She didn't know she'd finally sleep through the night without second-guessing herself. But I know. 'Cause she became me. Now, when I walk into my studio each morning, I don't feel like I'm playing a part or trying to prove my worth. I just show up. Fully. Proudly. Unapologetically. As Calla Winslow. The woman who built everything. Twice.